Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Readiness in Japan and Los Angeles, How to Prepare for the Next Big Earthquakes. My name is Yuko Kaifu, and I'm the president of Japan House Los Angeles. We're pleased to co-present this special webinar with the Consulate General of Japan in Los Angeles. Today, we're presenting this webinar inviting experts in disaster management from Japan and Los Angeles, who will be discussing similarities and differences between Japan and the United States. First, I would like to invite Consul General Kenko Sone to make opening remarks. Consul General?
Thank you, Kai-san. Good afternoon. My name is Kenko Sone, Consul General of Japan in Los Angeles. A little bit awkward that I usually go to the Japan House for the physical meetings, but it's always nice to be in this kind of session so that we can outreach many people, which people cannot even join to the meetings on site. So thank you very much for joining today's event, and especially to the speakers, Professor Takeya and Ms. Parks, and moderator, Professor Abe. Thank you for being a part of this important conversation. In California and Japan, major earthquakes are not the matter of if, but when. Japan is prone to natural disasters. Yesterday, March 11th, marks the 13 years since the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake, and sadly this year, again, a new year begins with the deadly Noto Peninsula earthquake. I'd like to express my deepest condolences once again to the families of the deceased and sympathy to those affected by the earthquakes. In response to these disasters, Japan has received various expressions of goodwill, including donations from friends in the United States. I'd like to thank you all for your support and friendship. Japan's public and private sectors have focused on disaster readiness and have accumulated experience, expertise, know-how, information, and technology. Japan is ready to share this knowledge about earthquake readiness with as many countries as possible facing similar disasters. One example is that in 2015, Japan hosted UN World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction in Sendai and initiated the concept of Build Back Better, included in the Sendai Framework on Disaster Risk Reduction. I'd like to work together, especially here in this region. I would like to work closely with the counterparts in Los Angeles and broader California, because this region is also vulnerable to the major earthquakes and disasters. I hope today's event enables us to share information, best practices for rescue, recovery, and reconstruction, and to work together to prepare the earthquake disasters at the different levels, including federal, national, states, prefectures, cities, and communities, so that we are better equipped to minimize damages and devastations in the future. So I'm very much looking forward to today's discussion. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Consul General. It's always nice to have you either in person or online, so thank you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the first speaker, Professor Kimio Takeya. Professor Takeya is a distinguished technical advisor on disaster risk reduction for Japan International Cooperation Agency, known as JICA. He's also a visiting professor at Tohoku University, International Research Institute of Disaster Science. He's very well known in the world as disaster risk reduction and reconstruction policy advisor. After a disaster happens anywhere in the world, he's requested to discuss with the ministerial level, very high-ranking decision makers of the affected country on how to recover from the disaster. He was a main member of Japanese government negotiation team for the formulation of Sendai Framework for disaster risk reduction and reconstruction 2015 through 2030. And he also proposed the Build Back Better as an international standard of recovery concept, which I'm sure that he'll be talking about during his presentation. So Professor Takeya, please take it away.
Thank you very much. For your introduction, I will share my screen, try to share. Okay, let's start. So what do you image from the disaster, the earthquake? This is a liquefaction and the building falling down, but still Buddhist small structures survive. And secondary cascaded fire happened in Japan after the earthquake. So 2015, as introduced from opening, was extremely important year for international society. Why? Sendai is, of course, that is 2015, the climate change Kyoto Protocol, all of you know, finished or must revise 2015. And one more, Millennium Development Goals, mainly for the developing poverty reduction initiative must be revised 2015. And the disaster reduction initiative is coming from Yokohama strategy, Hyogo framework, and then we must change. So these three big international initiatives all must be revised in 2015. And first, in March, we must revise Sendai Framework. As you know already, in the September, we must revise two sustainable development goals. In the December, we must agree through the COP25 Paris Agreement. So these three items we agreed to start 2015 and 2030. And you understand the Sendai Framework is the beginning of this huge items agreement. So we try to make not only the disaster risk reduction world standard, but also construct the fundamental conditions which we can agree in SDGs negotiation and climate change negotiations. So from that point of view, Sendai Framework was very important, not only limited to the disaster risk reduction. And this is UN agreement, Sendai Framework, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030. And the content is on the right side. And hazard and exposure, let's back to flood case is easy to understand. So let's explain about the flood case. There's several types of risks. One is existing risk, like this. This is a Sri Lanka case. People knows where to live, not to live in the flood area. But future risk will happen produced by our activities or development or desire to living more like this. So people change to living in the hillside and down to the floodplain. So risk will not be based on the indigenous knowledge, a short-term profit-oriented economy will make more risks. So how about climate change effect for the future? And the hazard and exposure overlap zone is we call risk. And also hazard will increase future or exposure will decrease by our activities, our effort. So hazard and exposure and coping capacity all gathers and overlapping force is a risk. Someone says like this. And coping capacity will structure measures and non-structure capacities can reduce the exposure and hazard both. So this is a conceptual sense. And the variation of risk type which we agreed in the Sendai Framework is magnitude of frequency, like this is left side is Manila case. Every 3 or 4 or 5 years, flood will happen because of the countermeasure is not enough. And the right side is 2011 East Japan big earthquake and tsunami. Every 1,000 years earthquake happened. So that's extensive event, high frequency happened. One damage is small, but huge damage by the total, everywhere randomly happening. And one more thing is intensive event, low frequency, but serious damage by one event, like a big earthquake and tsunami. And so extensive event and the intensive risk and the existing risk and the future risk, these two types and 4 case of risk we are handling, and try to how to reduce. One priority is understanding the disaster risk. Knowledge is very important. And then priority 2 is strengthening disaster risk governance to manage disaster risk. And the priority 3 is investing in disaster risk reduction for resilience. Make investment today for the future. So this is very important, not the humanitarian issue. This is the developing issue. And priority 4, enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response and to build back better in recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. These 3 pillars is the international standard now. So this logic are like this: investing for the preparedness, build back better, and disaster will happen. We must make these disaster management cycle, typical these cycle must be led by the good governance or leadership or management. Today we can hear from the Los Angeles, Carol-san, about how to manage. And also these must be based on the knowledge, evidence, science, not someone's will, but must be based on the science, scientific evidence. So today we can guide from the Professor Abe about the scientific point of view. And we decided 7 targets by the Sendai Framework. Before Sendai, we didn't set up the target, but we set the 3 input target: access to the information, international cooperation, and the national local strategy, national and local strategy by 2020. These 3 items is increase. By increasing these 3 items, we can reduce mortality, we can reduce affected people, we can reduce the damage to critical infrastructure. And finally, we can reduce economic losses. So these 3 are just not to specify to reduce the mortality only, but we also how to reduce the economic loss of the whole society. By this, we can merge DRR to sustainable development goals. So early warning, we can reduce the mortality, but we cannot reduce the economic loss. By the prevention investment measures, we can reduce the economic loss. So this is the structure of 7, 3 input target and 4 outcome targets of Sendai Framework. Okay, there are many types of vulnerability, not the risk. So wide area oriented hazard and vulnerability like earthquake and heavy rain flood area, or hurricane area, landslide area, and drought area, and so on. And also more simplified, vulnerability depends on flood area only along the river line area. So natural conditions are main causes of vulnerability, like this, along the riverside. And earthquake vulnerability depends on the mainly, of course, area depends on the area, but then depends on the quality of structure or quality of houses. Low quality structure get the big damage. So artificial conditions are the main cause of the vulnerability. So like this. So preventing measures are quite different between earthquake and flood. And earthquake in Japanese case, as you know, Japan and United States and Asian country, Pan-Pacific, around the Pacific region, we have the plate crushing area zone. So strong earthquake and deadly earthquake historically make a very huge number of the people die. In this case, what government must do, shown in the UN document Sendai Framework. So government hierarchy structure in Japan. In Japan case, central government has a very big role, and then prefecture government and the city government, there's a layer structure. And the city government must face, municipality government must directly face to the citizen who will suffer. And the US government may be a little bit different to Japan. City government must face the citizens, that's the same. And the state government is very close linked to the city government, and the state government linked to the federal, but the city government, I guess, not so strong relationship to the federal government. This is a big difference between Japan. And Organigram of the Japanese government like this: cabinet and cabinet office and many line ministry, and in Japan there is a Ministry of State for Disaster Management and Minister of State for Reconstruction Agency. We have such a kind of specified to the disaster risk reduction. So, and also we have the Central Disaster Management Council, which is headed by the Prime Minister and all minister, and Bank of Japan, Japan Red Cross, and NHK Public National Broadcasting Company, and the National Telephone Company, and also professors group from the civil engineering and the professor of sociology, and such a kind of all sectors people gather to one council. And also we have more detailed council to talk about how to manage as a more specialist. So based on this, in Japan, well-known three elements of disaster risk reduction and management. One is self-support, support by yourself, or mutual support, support each other by the community, and public support from the government. It is very well known in Japan. These three items simultaneously support each other. And this is a case of Tokyo Metropolitan Government prepare for the people. I will just announce. This is the magnitude of we supposing. And this is a real earthquake in 2095 in Kobe. You can see very big earthquake, weekend standing, but still the structure is not collapsed down. So the people is safe inside. And the earthquake, many people say that school education and propaganda, but if the school, for example, if the school is vulnerable, catastrophic collapse will happen, then evacuation plan has no sense, or hide under the desk we are doing in Japan is not enough. So let's see one more. This is a Nepal earthquake 2015, April, happened like this. This is a typical pancake crush type of the brick houses in the developing country, everywhere in the world. Same as Nepal earthquake like this, and same as Indonesia. And wood in the left side, wooden structure, very traditional wooden structure is very safe, just up on the epicenter. But the brand new brick houses seriously damaged like this. And the same in Croatia 2020 earthquake. So layer structure for policy priority target is very important to the government and to the people. The first layer is government complex, for example, main hospital or police building. If collapsed, who will save the citizen? And the second layer is lifeline, main road, school, transportation, government service, supply chain, and so on, which is essential. And the third layer, local school or local business or livelihood or facilities. And the fourth layer is private houses. Plenty of private houses existing. So in order to harmonize these structures, what is the central government role? What is the local government role? What is the private sector's role and people's role? That's quite different. So, for example, for the first layer, earthquake observation network or urban plan or land use plan or emergency train shutdown system for the transportation system, or retrofit implementation system by the local government, or subsidiary system which Japan is doing by the municipality to the people. Such a kind of many items or policy must be structured. And based on this kind of essence or concept, the Japanese government find out after the 1995 earthquake that the Japanese public school is 100% not not safe as 100%. So we spend 15 years to starting to retrofit all the public school in Japan. So we reach spending 15 years and reach to 100% safe. So that's the role of the government, because government can take tax from the people. Instead of taking the rights to take the tax, the government must secure the people's life and asset. So that's the role of central government. So in Japan, we spent 15 years. And this is a responsibility of the government and build back better after the disaster. So on the other hand, the many technology or engineering aspect is selected by the hazard and the society. Modern engineering setup scenario, we set up the scenario hazard, but they usually happen more than scenario hazard happen. This is 1995 in Kobe. We also experienced same kind of damage like Los Angeles. And build back better to strengthening structure and implement enforcement, taking the 5 to 10 years. And technical war inevitably selected by the hazard and the society, survive or disappear, useful or not useful. We must select each technology. And then that's a modern engineering setup, like a hazard war exceeded design level, even magnitude 9.0. Moment magnitude over, as you know, brick train in Japan, that's running over 250 km per hour speed operation. For fail-safe system functioned only small digression or no crushing each other or no one died. So within, we set up the technology one, the earthquake alert system after the first shake and make it happen to quick break, and technology two, elevated railway bridge enforcement after Hanshin earthquake 1995. So small damage to the railway system and no one died. But anyhow, we could not prevent nuclear power plant failure cascaded by the earthquake and tsunami like this. As all of you know, the Fukushima, overconfidence or bureaucracy of our society, or living in silo, or stop thinking for fail-safe system and engineering arrogance. We are very much lesson learned and try to not to do the same thing for the future. And the fourth layer, private house. It's a very huge number of houses existing. So the subsidiary system for private houses to enhance anti-earthquake strengthening system is already in Japan. So people get the subsidiary system from the municipality and check their houses, and if found not safe, they will try to do some enforcement. This kind of social system is very important. And one more thing is, once not directly by the earthquake, but cascaded disaster will happen, especially in Japan. Wooden houses is very vulnerable for fire. And once fire happens, hazard will exceed design level, and the typical old wooden house causes big fire after earthquake. The left side is 1923 in Tokyo area. Huge fire happened, and fail-safe system fails in the Tokyo. The downtown Tokyo is very old town. So Tokyo metropolitan government cannot replace the houses because that's a private asset. So they try to make the big road, and once fire happened, unfortunately, we cannot shut down the fire. So put the huge anti-fire building and stop to chain fire will happen to the next block. So such a kind of fail system we're already implementing. So of course, but rebuild the wooden house to fire-proof material is very important. So private sector selling the anti-fire, fire-proof wall system as a private product. So that's a very interesting. And one more thing, private sector role and houses. All houses are low quality in Japan. So houses as a total system is crashing down. But please keep in the nighttime, one room is very strong, not to pancake crash down and not to die. So such a kind of rather tricky instrument also setting, but in case of the retrofitting is not available, but not so common. People prefer to rebuild new houses. So based on these kind of discussion or materials, are there common knowledge for us or not? So Northridge earthquake happened in 1994, January 17th. As already many people forgot, or I don't know, really understand the situation. And the Hanshin Awaji earthquake happened in 1995, January 17th, in the same day, same calendar day, 1 year after, almost same situation happened. And when the Northridge happened, Japanese scientist or engineer thought such a kind of, how to say, highway falling down or such a kind of situation will not be happened in Japan. They believed so. But in the reality, the earthquake power is more than we set up the design level. But the earthquake will happen more than over design level. So very dramatically, significantly, the bridge falling down, not so many people died by this bridge, but secondly, cascaded fire happened. So this is a big situation. So building resilient society for the earthquake, role of each stakeholder. For example, the political leadership is very important, top management, or government or municipality who is facing to the people, implementing the capacity is very important. And citizen and academia, scientific evidence and the solution, and do the right thing based on the road or based on the subsidiary system, based on the standard. That's very important to the not only the government but also citizen, because private house government cannot replace as a force measures, and we have not so many such a budget. So well-balanced society system is very important. And how to prepare for the future earthquake. Experience of Japan and Los Angeles may be similar. And a well-balanced society system is needed, and let's discuss between Japan and Los Angeles together. I want to listen from the Carol-san today, what is Los Angeles preparing for the future? And also our common knowledge can contribute to the world. For example, especially vulnerable countries like South America or Caribbean countries, they are also suffering from the earthquake. We are supporting. And Asia country. And even for the Turkey or such a kind of plate zone, they are very much vulnerable. Common character is for the houses made by brick, very weak. But for the infrastructure, like a bridge or reservoir system or gas pipeline or electric pipeline, that's the same made by the concrete type, and almost standard is same in the world. Through the discussion, hoping this net seminar can encourage Los Angeles and for the future disaster risk reduction in the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you so very much, Professor Takeya. Your presentation was very helpful in deepening our understanding, putting things into broader perspective, and serves as a very good segue to the next portion of the program. Now I'd like to invite Professor Hitoshi Abe, Director of Terasaki Center for Japanese Studies of UCLA, and he's a professor of the Department of Architecture and Urban Design at UCLA. He'll be moderating the discussion. I would also like to invite Ms. Carol Parks, General Manager of the Emergency Management Department of City of Los Angeles. She's joining the discussion with Professor Takeya. And now I'd like to hand the floor over to you, Professor Abe.
Thank you very much, Kaifu-san, for the introduction. As you already noticed, there are increasing numbers of disasters in the world threatening our daily lives. And it is very important to be aware that the disaster might happen anytime around us. And I believe that this kind of symposium will help you to start the conversation with people around you. So today, Professor Takeya just presented the Sendai Framework, disaster standard adopted by United Nations, and on 2015, actually, and then role of public and private sector in disasters in Japan. So before we start the discussion about today's theme, readiness in Japan and Los Angeles, how to prepare for the next big earthquake, similarities and differences between Japan and the US. I'd like to ask Ms. Parks to introduce us about the situation of earthquake preparedness in Los Angeles. So please welcome Ms. Parks, Director of Emergency Management Bureau, City of Los Angeles.
Thank you, Professor Abe, to the Consul General, to the Japan House. It's my pleasure to join the conversation, especially with my partners there in Japan. Certainly, Professor Takeya's presentation was very timely, very much of interest, as we share many commonalities in our effort to ensure that our populations are prepared for our worst day. As we know, the earth shakes every day, all day throughout the day, and we don't feel it as much, but we do know that the potential is there for a catastrophic earthquake here in Los Angeles. So we do thank our partners there in Japan and throughout the world who've taken the time to do the research. You've invested a lot of money and a lot of brain trust in making things better for our residents and the visitors who come to our country. So with that, I again appreciate being a part of the conversation, and I'm here to learn as well, because just as we prepare, there's always the opportunity to continue the learning and the training that we've accomplished thus far in the profession of emergency management. All right, so again, on behalf of the City of Los Angeles Emergency Management Department, thank you very much for allowing us to be a part of the conversation today. And certainly our preparedness and our readiness for the next big earthquake continues. There's still a lot of work that remains to be done, and so we look forward to learning from you. The city's emergency management department survives every day, and we exist every day to be the city's lead in innovative emergency management efforts for preparing, responding, and recovering from not just earthquakes, but from all hazards. So our vision is to be the most prepared and resilient city in America. And to that end, we have various department priorities that help ensure that we are working towards our mission and vision on a daily basis. Los Angeles is beautiful. However, as you know, the Federal Emergency Management Agency and their partners have determined that we have a lot of risk here, a lot of natural hazards and a lot of man-made hazards. So that means that our risk level increases all the time. For those known threats and for those threats that are emerging and for those that we may not know about. On a day-to-day basis, daytime population is around 4 million to 6 million, actually, nighttime about 4 million, and we're huge. We are one of 88 cities in LA County, so we have a lot of square mileage around the city, both land and sea, so that means that whenever we prepare one area of our city, we have to prepare all areas of our city for the various hazards that can happen. There are over 200 languages spoken here. So we are working to ensure that Los Angeles, like Japan, builds in that culture of preparedness, just to be sure that people are aware of, know their hazards, and can be ready for any eventuality that can happen in our city. We are known to have many hazards, including wildfires, flooding, mudslides, extreme heat, just to name a few. As you can see in this slide, recently, last year, we dealt with a lot of extreme heat. In the recent years, we've experienced a lot of climate change, and that climate change has led to many days of heat. We've had a series of days and weeks where we've had multiple days of triple-digit temperatures, and we have to prepare for that. We have to prepare our residents for that, our business owners. So how do we survive? How do we wrap our brains around extreme heat? Along with that, we have seasonal flooding. We have atmospheric river events. Earlier in February, we had to deal with that, and to be sure that our residents, especially in our low-lying areas, our hillside and canyon areas, knew what they needed to do to protect their homes. And even with all of the preparedness, we still had several businesses and private residents who were impacted by multiple days of rain that caused a lot of flooding and slope failures in our city. Our day-to-day blue sky issue is homelessness. We're working to, under the leadership of our illustrious mayor, Mayor Karen Bass, we're working to see how we can move the mileage on the amount of homeless that is in our streets. It's a day-to-day thing that we are looking at, and certainly when we have these weather events happen, it directly impacts those who are unhoused. So whether it's extreme heat, extreme cold, flooding, or an earthquake, we need to ensure that all of Los Angeles is prepared, and that includes people experiencing homelessness. This year, we were also, and part of last year, dealing with the sudden arrival of asylum seekers from multiple countries. And as we receive asylum seekers, we too must be sure that they're prepared and that they are knowledgeable of the hazards that can happen here. So when we talk about readiness, what really does that mean? And it's simply the state of being fully prepared for something. And we ask ourselves, have we adequately prepared city government? Have we adequately prepared our residents and our business owners? Here in Southern California, we have a lot of activity here, over 300 active faults. And on any given day, we don't know which one of them may erupt next, but we certainly want to be sure that we work with our seismologists, our scientists, and researchers to ensure that we fully understand the current threats and the potential threats as they relate to our earthquake fault lines. One of the ones that's most talked about, although we have several of them, is the San Andreas fault. And we do a lot of our catastrophic planning here in emergency management on this particular fault line, because we do know, in learning from Dr. Lucy Jones, a well-known, worldwide, world-renowned leader in this profession of earthquake science, that when the big one happens, we're going to have some major impacts. And so we look at that fault, we look at other faults that are around the LA area, and we try to figure out how we can best prepare all of Los Angeles for this potential catastrophic earthquake. We know that it's long overdue, and we know that it's not a matter of if, but when. And so should this shakeout scenario on the San Andreas fault occur, and when it does occur, we're going to have significant impact unlike we've ever seen here. And you can see the potential statistics here. So we ask the question, are our plans ready? Are our people ready? Are our business owners ready for what could potentially happen on any given day at any hour of the day here in Los Angeles? One of the things that we are encouraging all sectors of our community, all of our community lifelines, is to better understand all of our hazards, our earthquake hazards, flood hazards, fire hazards, tsunami hazards. So California Office of Emergency Services has a program that we widely advertise to teach our residents to visit this website, type in their address so that they can learn about the hazards in their place of business or where they live, so that they can better prepare for that worst day here in Los Angeles. Working with a lot of our partners, we are very supportive of earthquake early warning. We know that it can save lives. So we are promoting everyone to sign up for it. We are supporting additional resources and additional funding so that we can increase the number of sensors, because we do know that just a few seconds notice will save lives here throughout the city of Los Angeles. We also encourage our residents to be fully prepared, to know their neighbors, to talk to their neighbors, to ensure that we're preparing not individually, not just by single households or single businesses, but we want neighborhoods to be prepared, communities to be prepared. So we have special guidance for them. We also are working with our businesses. We have over 500,000 businesses here in Los Angeles, and we want to ensure that they have the necessary information to plan in advance, no matter what type of emergency it is, but we want them to be prepared for all hazards. So we're working very closely with our business communities. As the professor mentioned, this is the 30th year of the Northridge anniversary. That day in 1994, in the middle of the night when the earth shook, we were severely impacted. And so as we commemorate that, as we hold our moments of silence for those who lost lives or loved ones, we want to be sure that we're continuing to do the research necessary and educate our residents on the importance of being prepared for earthquakes. I'm very happy to report that through the Earthquake Country Alliance and other partners, that we are running a year-long commemorative promotion of how we can better prepare our residents. It's an educational campaign to increase the awareness about hazards, to encourage places of worship, non-governmental organizations, and again, communities, of things that they can do themselves. These are action items that all residents can take, all business owners can take to ensure that we're prepared. And also later in this month, we will be observing Tsunami Preparedness Month. We do know that tsunamis are on our threat list as well as earthquakes. And so we want to ensure that our coastal communities know how to prepare whenever we get a tsunami watch or warning or advisory. We want them to know exactly those steps to take so that they can move to higher ground very quickly for their safety. So in short, what do we do now? What do we do before the major earthquake, major flood, major fire, whatever that major event is? Whatever we do now will determine the lives that can be saved and the property that can be spared to ensure that we can recover quickly when our major event happens. I want to thank my partners, because in emergency management, we don't have all of the answers, so we have to rely on our experts, Margaret Vinci, Mark Benthian, and Dr. Lucy Jones, for their leadership, for all of the work that they're continuing to do. It really takes whole of government, whole of community to ensure that we are prepared for eventualities that can happen here in Los Angeles. And I encourage all of you to continue to stay in touch with us, provide information to us, give us your questions, share with us your ideas to ensure that we are prepared for our next big earthquake or disaster. Whatever may come our way, we want to be sure that we are most prepared. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Parks. Now we had two presentations about disaster and also how to prepare, actually, from Japan and Los Angeles. So while there are differences due to actually there are huge differences in the context, but also there are also many things that we can share in terms of disaster management. And I think, I'd like to start this discussion by asking same question to Professor Takeya and Ms. Parks. First, what was your kind of impression on each other's presentation? If you can give us your feedback, actually. Professor Takeya first.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, Carol-san, thank you very much for a very, very holistic presentation about what we were doing in Los Angeles. I'm very much impressed. In the more than 30 years ago, the disaster issue is like a humanitarian issue. But now, the situation is changing in order to survive our society. We must prepare. Not the humanitarian issue, but how to business continuity or local societies continuities issues. So from that point of view, I'm very much impressed. You are very much linked to the state government and based on the FEMA's and federal government, all holistic approach. I'm very much appreciated and impressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Takeya. And I must say that Japan is arguably the world leader in earthquake preparedness because you have larger and more frequent earthquake events. And you have been working there in Japan with the residents there to ensure that earthquake information, preparedness, response, and recovery is interwoven in the lifestyle. So on a moment's notice, there in Japan, residents know exactly what to do. They heed the warnings, they heed the advice. And so that's one of the things that we are hoping here in Los Angeles, that we can do a better job.
Yeah.
We don't have large scale earthquakes on a regular basis. So people, I believe, really wonder, will they happen here? And I know we get reminders. Last month, we had a reminder last year. And, a lot of days we have reminders, but there are small scale earthquakes where there's really no major damage. No one gets injured, but the earth shakes. And so it's a gentle reminder that we're living in earthquake country, but we do certainly respect the research that has been done there. We appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you as a global partner. And I like that in your presentation where you talked about the linkages between Los Angeles and Japan to ensure that we're comparing notes to see how we can continue to advance the research to improve upon how we respond and recover when earthquakes happen.
Okay, thank you. As Ms. Park said, the Japan is exposed to so many earthquakes, and there are so much to learn for us, actually, who lives in LA from Japan. And actually, I was shocked by learning the scenario you presented, Ms. Parks, about just if this earthquake, potential of earthquake and its damages. And as Professor Takeya said, the damage of the earthquake is defined by hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. And definitely we have to sort of deal with this vulnerability that we have in LA. So I wonder, Professor Takeya, if you could point out any significant differences in earthquake countermeasures between Japan and US based on your experience from larger perspective of United Nations.
Yeah, thank you very much. So for the earthquake itself, how to prepare for the earthquake, it's almost same. But in Los Angeles, I think the earthquake is same as Japan, how to prepare, but not so many heavy damage happen from tsunami. But in Japan, earthquake cascaded tsunami is one of another disaster we needed to prepare. So it's a big difference. And the next, another character is fire. Of course, after the North Ridge, the small garbage houses or some houses fire but happen, but not so serious fire like Noto or Tokyo area. we suppose, cascaded disaster. One is tsunami, the other is fire. It's a big difference between two cities, I think, but I'm not sure. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Ms. Parks, I mean, I will ask you almost same question. What do you think about actually Professor Takeya's opinion, and what is your opinion on the difference between Japan and US? What's the big differences?
Geographically, there are differences, and the likelihood of us having frequent large earthquakes isn't the same because of the difference in the tectonic plates. However, I think that the threat still remains. We may not see the significant tsunamis on our coastline, but there is a potential for tsunami activities. I mean, we saw it after the 2011 earthquake. So we have to prepare for both and ensure that our residents are taking seriously that when we do ask them to be prepared to learn their hazards, that no matter where they are in the world, I mean, we could be visiting in Japan, or we could have residents from Japan visiting us here in LA. So we need to understand the severity of the hazards, I think, in the two locations, and just be ready to heed whatever warnings are put in place when something happens. And I will never forget, I worked in South Georgia some years ago, and I was asked to go to an area of South Georgia that had flooded extremely badly. And there was a couple there who had moved from another country because they were trying to get away from whatever hazard that they were dealing with, only to unfortunately be impacted by this potential flooding event. So that's one of the things that I think everyone should do, is to learn the hazards. If you're on vacation, know the hazards where you're going. Or if you change your residence, know the hazards where you're moving to, because you can leave one geographic area of the world and move to another one and be impacted by whatever could happen.
Yeah, that's the same situation happened in Tokyo, downtown Tokyo area. In the metropolitan downtown Tokyo, there's a small Edogawa ku, living more than 1 million people living there. But the ground height is below sea level. Within that area, more than 1 million people living there. And so if once earthquake happened nighttime and a tsunami happened in the nighttime, it's very difficult to escape even such a situation. So the Tokyo metropolitan government make the seawall and protecting sea gate, shutdown gate, and in the gate and outside to the seaboard, seaside, is a big letter written by the metropolitan government: "We will stop tsunami." On the inside, from the people side, written by the Tokyo metropolitan government, "We will protect our citizens." It's a very strong message from the local government to realize their responsibility and do their best. That's very impressive. If you have a chance, please see there. Thanks.
Ms. Parks, actually, that every country, every location has a totally different context, and where there's a weak point, right? So, just in your personal opinion, what's the most weak point of LA against the earthquake? Like a most vulnerable, actually, area you think in this LA that we need to pay attention to? I mean, is that possible to say? I know that you are spending lots of energy to share the possibility of risk or danger by disaster among many people through series of events. But I'm just curious, if there's any area that City of LA is paying attention to.
Well, certainly, we are paying attention to our most vulnerable populations, and we do our best to educate people on what the hazards are, how they need to prepare for them. However, we still struggle getting people to actually commit to preparedness. we go out and we do our training. We have online programs. We have community events where, there are informational booths, and we teach people on how to best prepare at home, at work, in transit, no matter where they are. However, getting Angelenos to actually invest in preparedness, no matter how big or how small, any amount of preparedness is better than no preparedness at all. So we're working to ensure that we look at our messaging to see how we can tailor it to meet the needs. We have so many different nationalities here, so many different age groups here. And so we are concerned about our older adults. We're concerned about our younger generations. And so we are now having to partner with other nonprofit organizations and academia to understand the social vulnerabilities, to understand the psychological aspects of readiness and what that means. So the more that we can encourage and get people to actually take a simple step of knowing what your hazards are, and then when you learn them, communicate, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family members and friends to get them to embrace the importance of preparedness. So it remains a work in progress. And unfortunately, some of us don't learn until something significant happens, but we're really trying to do what I call Blue Sky Day, educating and promoting our community on the need to be prepared.
I have one question to Carol-san. Is it okay, Abe-sensei?
Of course.
Yeah. My question is very simple. In Japan, private housing construction company produce new technology to how to resist earthquake more low cost as a product or design. And it is commercialized in the TV or in the newspaper, and people try to, if the government say the new regulation or building code, the people want to fit to it. And the private sector also do the business by that. How about in Los Angeles or United States? Such a kind of private sector is very, how to say, as a selling point of anti-earthquake technology, low-cost houses, or such a kind of initiative is existing or not?
Well, since 1994, we've really made great strides in looking at our infrastructure here and working with all of our partners to ensure that there are some seismic retrofitting projects happening. So we do have various companies who are working with various apartment buildings to make sure that they're seismically retrofitted.
For the retrofit, do you make subsidiary to them? Subsidiary money given to the private houses owner, or?
There is a program now that's through our state office, California Office of Emergency Services, where they can apply to get some funding, but it's a survey you have to qualify for. So there are certain guidelines that have to be followed. But not only are we concerned about seismic retrofitting of our buildings, and we're very fortunate that our building codes have advanced, but also those non-structural retrofitting things that people can do themselves to make sure that things are bolted to the walls and that they are secure, because so many injuries happen from falling objects. So there in our home improvement stores, there are products that are sold where people can do things themselves, strap things down, bolt things down to ensure that they don't fall over during an earthquake.
Actually, very unfortunately, we have to actually end this conversation in 3 to 4 minutes. So can I ask, both of you about maybe the final comment, but maybe how can we take this sort of message from United Nations and then can be adapted to Los Angeles? Starting with Professor Takeya.
Yeah, thank you very much. So in the Sendai Framework, we decided to set up local disaster risk reduction plan or strategy. And already Los Angeles have its own strategy. So next is how to implement it. So in Japan case, we are facing to the population reducing, not to the population growth. So that means income tax is decreasing. But in the Los Angeles, still growing bigger and bigger, and but anyhow, many mixture of the people. So it's very difficult, more than difficult to compare to Japan. So we can change our, experience, past experience and technology or scientific fact or evidence survey, and make cooperation for the future. I definitely believe. And also one more thing, we can support through our experience to the development country like Caribbean country and South American and Asian country, which are suffering from same kind of disaster. Thanks.
Anything that you can actually, how to say, I know it's a very difficult question, but any good idea coming from Sendai Framework?
Most definitely. And I would say here at Emergency Management, we just need to continue to understand the science behind earthquakes, understand the potential threats for the various fault lines that run through the city, and work more closely with our scientists, our seismologists, and our researchers to ensure that we continue to understand the potential threats and to also work more closely with our partners there in Japan. Certainly the framework and the documentations that have been created will only help to influence the work that we need to continue to do around the globe when it comes to earthquake readiness. Certainly advancing earthquake early warning is an ideal thing. And so any other technology that can be brought to bear to ensure that we are looking holistically at the importance of preparing not only for earthquakes, but also for those consequential situations. Professor talked about fires after earthquakes and tsunamis. And so as much information as we can incorporate into our catastrophic planning will help us better recover when these events do happen.
Thank you. I feel we just started to warm up, but unfortunately we have to end. Now I'd like to open the conversation to the audience. And please welcome actually Mr. Naoki Matsumura from JICA to present the questions he selected among many questions probably from the audience.
Thank you very much, Professor Abe, for introduction. So we received many questions. Thank you very much from the audience. So I would like to pick up some questions from the audience. So first one is to Ms. Parks. So how is the collaboration between state and federal government in the US? Because it's different from the central and prefectural government system in Japan.
Okay, thank you so much for your question. So here in the United States, we have a really good working relationship here in Los Angeles. We are, as I mentioned earlier, one of 88 cities. And we go through and we use a standardized emergency management system called SIMS. So what happens is all disasters are local, right? So the city will be the first to respond. However, for a major or catastrophic earthquake, all of our resources will most likely be in use or unable to be used. So we will reach out to the county. That's the operational area. The county will see how that they could support us. We work with them, we train with them, we do exercises with them. We're now doing more joint emergency planning together. So they understand our needs and our gaps. And so on a blue sky day, the more that we work together, the better we can respond together. When resources exceed the capacity for both the city and the county, we then, through the county, work to communicate our needs or our gaps with the state. So the California Office of Emergency Services is that state agency that is a part of the reporting process through the standardized emergency management system. If the state cannot fulfill the needs, then they go up to the federal government. So we do train to this, and it's embedded in all of our plans for all of the various hazards that we have plans for. We follow this structure because it's important that we do that so that the federal government can continue to understand the various risks that we have. Also, it's important so that we can get federal support. Should there need to be a declaration, that process is necessary so that we can get the assistance that we need from the federal government. And also, we want to stay in good partnership with our feds because they provide grant funding that allows us to do the work that we do. So they supplement the budget that I have here in city government. So we're able to use grant funding to do additional research to provide additional tools and technologies that are needed. It's funded through that grant program.
Thank you very much, Ms. Parks. Yes, and the second question is to Professor Takeya regarding the earthquake early warning system in Japan. So you showed a slide on the stopping trains through the automatic early warning system. So are there any other automated action the earthquake early warning system triggers? Specifically, audience want to know in hospitals. So do you know how the early warning system is utilized for the public services?
Okay, thank you very much. Early warning system is not a forecasting, just first catch up the first shake and then make the warning. And usually for the old citizen, through the smartphone, we get buzzer, 111 buzzer, which will alert within few seconds, usually 5 seconds or 6 seconds, a big earthquake happen. So this is one of the common early warning system to the citizen. And for that, it is the same for hospital. And this system is automatically make the broadcasting or early warning through the TV. Every TV station will broadcast this in the logo, in the whatever program is running. They must alert. So this is a social system. And the same system will make, especially inside the hospital, by the meteorological agency. It is broadcasted by the meteorological agency, go down to same system to the hospital. And within the hospital, they have their own system to make an alert. This is a very common system in Japan. And also, the big hospital has a vibration control structure. But even in the big shake coming, it is reduced the vibration and try to keep the function of the hospital to the bigger. And we appoint such a kind of big main hospital as an area main hospital, which will survive and accept the refugee and make the triage. And that's the experience of our earthquake in 2011. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor Takeya. And the third question is to both Ms. Parks and Professor Takeya. So large cities such as Los Angeles, Tokyo, and Yokohama have high densities of population. Housing shortage exists on a regular basis, but amplified significantly after a large disaster. So after the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, some innovative temporary housing was created, such as Shigeru Ban's Onagawa Container Project. So what should the role of the government be in encouraging the private sector to innovate and propose solutions in advance of catastrophic events in our cities? This is the question. So the role of the government be in encouraging the private sector to innovative and propose solutions. This is a question. Thank you very much.
Okay, from my side, as I said, in Japan, the anti-earthquake or temporary shelter, such a kind of DRR business is rising, but mainly from the small enterprise, but they are doing very, how to say, special product. So for the temporary shelter houses, house itself can be used by container or such a kind of issue, but the lifeline, water supply and sewage system and the electric supply, such a kind of system is a little bit takes more time to implement. So this is we are now facing in the Noto earthquake also. And also we are facing for population decreasing. So rather vacant houses is located in the center of the mega cities. So that's a next problem for us. So local government role is very important because central government make the policy and get the budget and make the rule, but the implementation itself must be done by the local government, like Carol-san. So every time personal passion and effort is very important to implement it. Thanks.
And just to add to that, this is a great observation because you heard me mention earlier that it takes whole of community. So government's resources are limited. And so we do lean on our private sector partners to join us at the table when it comes to emergency planning and readiness. And certainly this is a great idea that we discuss potential solutions that private sector can bring to the table, because following a large event such as a catastrophic earthquake, temporary housing will be very much needed. So the sooner that we can have that conversation with them on how we can work together to potentially sketch out a solution, that will be great. Because a lot of times there are resources all around us that we may not know about. And now following COVID-19, we have a lot of vacant buildings. And as we look at potential locations and resources, there may be very well some solutions or some innovative ideas that we can consider that we haven't done so in the past. So very good suggestion. And one that we should definitely look forward to having that continued dialogue with our private sector partners.
Okay, so thank you very much, actually, Matsumura-san. I think we have to conclude not only Q&A, but this talk. So again, Professor Takeya, Ms. Parks, thank you very much. And everybody, please give a round of applause to these two great speakers today. And now I will return the microphone to Ms. Kaifu. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Yes, another round of big applause to all the speakers. Thank you for the very thought-provoking, insightful discussion that you've had. People say that it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when, and it's a scary thought, and we tend to avoid that kind of thought. But it's much better to be prepared, and your discussion signifies the importance of learning from each other, and also about the importance of bilateral cooperation and global cooperation, even before something should happen. So thank you so very much, Professor Takeya, Ms. Parks, and Professor Abe. And also I wish to thank Mr. Matsumura for helping with the Q&A session. So we could go on for many more minutes, but I'm afraid that we need to wrap up. And I also like to thank the viewers for staying with us till the end, and also for your great questions. I'm sorry that we could not cover all of them. So thank you, everyone, speakers, and also the viewers, and see you again soon. Thank you.